All right. This is our mission. Are you guys seeing this? Okay.
Yep, it's working.
Okay, great, thanks. So our mission is to protect and preserve Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks through active stewardship and public education. CFI was started in 1994. Basically a group of folks, concerned individuals, saw some of the resource damage happening on the 14ers, and they decided that they needed a group that was solely dedicated to 14er protection and preservation. And we have just 31 seasonals this year, our largest crew we've ever hired. We have about 15 board members, and we have anywhere from 600 to 1,000 volunteers in a season. We partner with the U.S. Forest Service and the BLM and Youth Corps, and yeah. This is just a quick look at our season ahead. We will be back on North Mount Elbert, Mount Wilson, and Grays and Torreys. We are starting new trail construction on Mount Chavano, which we're really excited about. This will be a long 5-6 year project, and one of the most technical trails projects that we have ever done by the time it's completed. We'll run about 40 Adopt a Peak projects with volunteers all over the state on 15 or so 14ers. Obviously, we'll be running the Peak Steward program, and then we will place about 21 sustainable trail counters on the 14ers. It's just a quick look at hiking use numbers in 2020. We haven't released 2021 data yet. That will come out in a couple months. 2020 was crazy for a lot of reasons, but it was also really crazy on the 14ers, and got slammed with hikers. We think that 2021 will see less hiker use days, but it will be anywhere from 350 to 375, 100,000. And I'm going to pass it over to Terry.
Yeah, and I'm not going to talk a lot right this second because I'll talk more in a minute, but just want to reemphasize that as stewards, we really are the key part, one of the key parts of the public education part of the mission for CFI. And so the photo that you see now is Scott and me when we were down at one of the REI stores a few years ago. Just there to let people know that CFI exists and talk a little bit about what we do. So that's our job, and I'll talk a lot more about that as I get into the next part of my presentation.
Scott, you want to go through the leave no trace principles just real quick? Scott, are you there?
How's that?
Great.
Okay. Yeah, and I was pleased to hear that we have an LNT instructor in the Peak Stewards now. That's kind of a cool thing. LNT is really important to our mission in the mountains. Since we have so many people, it's become the thing to summit 14ers now. So the more people, the more problems we have with LNT. When I first started back in the 70s, it was, leave only footprints, take only photographs. And now we're trying to don't even leave footprints, because we build you these nice trails, stay on the trails and don't leave the footprints. So looking at the list here, it says plan ahead and prepare. Really, that's just are you ready for the mountains kind of thing, and we'll get more into that as we go through the training session. There we go, that's better. Travel and camp on durable surfaces. That's, we build these nice trails for you. Stay on them as much as you can. You bought these nice boots from REI. Don't worry about getting them muddy. That's what they're there for. You see people, oh, wow, there's water in the middle of the trail. I'm going to walk around the side of it. I'm not going to, well, no, that's what your boots are for. You just go right through it. Stay on the trails, stay off of everything else if you can. Disposing of waste properly, of course, that includes bodily wastes. You pack it in, pack it out, bag it up and take it back out with you. And any other type of waste off of your food or anything else. I carry a big plastic garbage bag in my bag, so I'm constantly picking up things that are left on the trail and filling up the bag with it as I'm peak stewarding. Leaving what you find. We're not up there to pick the flowers or pick the plants, or if you come apart like a mining site, we're not supposed to be taking items off the mining site just because they look cool. Leaving what you find, if it's there, leave it there. It's for everybody to enjoy, and if you take it with you, then other people won't get to enjoy it. Minimizing campfire impacts. I've always been a no campfire kind of hiker. I know a lot of my friends from the Midwest come out here, and the first thing they want to do is build a campfire, and I won't let them. And then I have another partner that I go climbing with, who spends a lot of his time demolishing fire rings that people make in the backcountry that have nothing to do with, the campsites and things like that. So campfires, yeah, I understand it, but especially these seasons with being so dry, and the impact is so great that it's really just bring a stove and emphasize that. Respecting the wildlife, we're going to have Loretta get into that quite a bit. It's their home. We're just kind of visiting, and we want to allow them to live and prosper, and they don't have we'll go into how they don't have a long time to eat during the summer, and we're kind of there during their eating period, and we're going to leave them alone so that they can get on about their business. So that's that. Being considerate of other visitors. Again, you've got this bunch of people up there at the same time, and they're all there to enjoy the backcountry, hopefully. I've seen people carrying boom boxes and things like that, and playing their stereos loud, and just or talking loudly down the trail. And that's kind of not what people get into the backcountry. They're there to get away from things, not to find them, not to be part of the city that they just left. So that's kind of like that. But we will, we'll talk about more of these things too as we get into them. It's just kind of a broad overview of the LNT.
Okay, I
Thanks,
guess.
Scott. Terry jumping.
Okay, this is again mostly aimed, I guess, at the folks who are new, but I guess those of you who've done it for a couple of years, if you have other comments, there is a chat section to this thing. If you look on your screen, you should be able to click on a little thing that looks like like you see in a comic book. It says show conversation. If you click on that, you can type in any questions or comments you want to make, and then we can try and answer those questions. But what I'm going to do is just talk about what I do each day when I go up as a peak steward. And some of you will do it just like this. Some of you might vary a little bit, but this is in general what we try to accomplish. The first thing is you have to pick a peak where you're going to go do your duty. We don't assign the peaks to you. You decide where you're going to go. We recommend that you go to the high volume peaks, And those, and again, I was just looking at the slide Hannah showed, it still holds true. The big high volume peaks are Quandary, Bierstadt, Lincoln Democrat and Bross, Grays and Tories, and Elbert are the ones that seem to have the largest traffic. So since our goal is to talk to people and to educate, we ask that you make every effort to go where there are people. And obviously these peaks have a lot of people. You on a busy day on some of them, I know on Bierstadt, we've seen as many as 1,000 people out there. So pick a peak. In addition, there'll be a list sent out to everybody a little bit later of the priority peaks, because the other place we like to have people help out is where there's a CFI work crew working. It's really good, and the photo that's here is actually where a CFI work crew is working. And if there's a peak steward there, they can answer questions about what's going on, and then the work crew doesn't get interrupted in their work. So those are other peaks we would ask you to choose if you have a chance. So that's really the first step, is deciding where you're going to go and make sure that somebody knows that you're going to be there. What to wear and what to show up, I kind of have on my uniform that I wear when I go as a peak steward. I'm lucky, I've been doing it a long time. And you can see the picture here, this guy who's doing some work as well. That's at Lincoln Democrat and Bross, I think. So I'm lucky, I've worked for a while as a peak steward. I've got a vest that says Colorado 14ers. I've got a name tag that you'll all have a name tag like this, I believe. In addition, I have another name tag for when it gets hot and I can take off the vest, and I've got this shirt on underneath. I wear a cap, and they're all, I believe, Hannah, there'll be caps available to everybody. Just try and show up as being somebody who's there for a reason. I always have a little clicker like this. I hope you can see me. One of these little clickers that you just click the number. I use that to count the number of people that I see on the mountain, not necessarily the number that I talk to, but this is so I can just keep a count. Even if people walk past me, I can click them off here, and that'll be important when we talk about the log later on. So I try and keep track of the number. I always have a pad like this in my hand, and inside I've already made up a list of the things that I'm going to want to keep track of. And again, this all relates to the log that we'll ask you to do after each day of duty. What I have on my list is I'll have a place where I record the number of cars that were in the parking lot or outside the parking lot. I'll have a little space made up already where I can just do tick mark of everybody that I actually talk to, so I can have a count of how many people I talk to. I have a section to tick off how many dogs that I saw, how many were on leash and how many were off leash, and whether I talked to the people whose dogs were off leash. Especially, I talk to all the dog people, but especially the ones who have dogs off leash, I have a place to note that. And then I usually have a little place to note if I saw many climbers who seemed completely unprepared to be there. So again, by having this outfit on, and a green shirt like this isn't the official Forest Service color, but it looks kind of official. So people see you with a shirt, the cap, the name tag, the pad, the clicker, they get suspicious that something's going on. And also, if I'm going to hike up the mountain a ways or up the trail a ways, Hannah, I don't know if you've got more of these, but I have one of these signs that Hannah had made up last year. And I just put that on the trail, probably maybe 50 yards ahead of where I've decided to sit and talk to people. And that gives them a warning that there's going to be somebody up there that they might want to talk to. So that's how I get myself ready to go. I usually go up and try to camp the night before because I don't like to get up too early. So if I'm going to be at the trailhead at 6 o'clock, I like to be camped near the trailhead. That's obviously personal choice for you. In most of these places, there are areas where you can sleep in your vehicle if you have room to do that, which is what I usually do. Then you're not worried about setting up a tent and taking up a camping spot. So I'll usually get there early. I'll get to the trailhead by 6 o'clock, and usually, because I don't sleep, I'm usually there before 6 o'clock. The best place to talk to people is at the trailhead. So that's why I was happy to hear some of these folks say, gee, I'm looking forward to a day where I'm not trying to summit. If you're hiking up the mountain, it's really hard to talk to the maximum number of people. So the two things I recommend is either be at the trailhead, as you can see in the photograph here, or park yourself someplace along the trail where people are likely to stop. So good places, just as example, on Mount Bierstadt, the creek crossing that's about a mile down the trail is a great place to set up, just set yourself for the day, because everybody usually stops there and looks at the creek and scratches their head and tries to figure how they're going to get across this raging torrent, which actually is about just over ankle deep. But anyway, they always make a big deal of it. But it's a good place to stop and talk to people. Also, there are places, let's see, Quandary doesn't have great ones. I usually just hang out at the trailhead on Quandary. Bierstadt, as I said, either the trailhead. Oh, the best place, by the way, on Bierstadt, if you go up there, is the bathroom in the parking lot. You always have a captive audience in the bathroom, at the bathroom. Don't go in the bathroom, talk to them, also at Quandary now, because of the new parking regulations, one of the things that I think some of the stewards have done now is gone down and ridden on the bus that now buses people up to the trailhead. And again, you've got a captive audience of a bunch of people sitting on a bus that you can give your spiel about CFI. So the big thing though is find a place where you're likely to have people stopping to talk. So again, it's either the trailhead or a likely rest place. Where the trail splits between Grays and Torreys is a good place to go because people come by there and usually take a break. The pass up on Lincoln, Democrat, and Brost, the pass where the trail splits to go to either Lincoln or Democrat, another great place because people always stop there and you can talk to a lot of people there. So again, that's the goal, is to talk to folks. There's a question there. Do we need to make a reservation at the Peak? No, I don't think so. Somebody, do you see that question, Hannah? I think you can just show up on these peaks.
I can't see any questions while I'm in presentation mode.
Oh, it says, do
People see Terry really quick? Sorry to interrupt. Can people see Terry while he's talking?
Yes.
You can. Okay.
All right.
Okay. I think because I'm recording this, that I really can't see anything except the presentation.
Well, Mindy asked, do we need to make a reservation at the peaks that require a reservation, or can we just show up? And I don't know the answer to that. I've never gone to a peak that requires a reservation to climb it. So
probably Quandary now.
Oh yeah, but Quandary, do you have to make a reservation to climb?
No.
No.
Whoops. We will be allowed to have admin parking at Quandary Peak. They are making an administrative lot. The tiny lot with the trailhead sign will be reserved for Peak stewards. I'm still working out the details of the city and the sheriff and all that. So more information to come on that. But there will be parking available. But you will need to give me some sort of notice, I believe, if you want to go to Quandary, so that we can get you a parking pass or whatever they require.
Yeah, and Randy said he just read that you have to make a reservation and a $50 fee. I think that's just to park up in the old parking area that's right near the trailhead, that you have to pay a fee. The bus, as far as I know, last year the bus was free. It was a free shuttle bus.
Except I think they're charging this year.
Yeah, the bus is free. They're charging for the bus.
We just lost you.
With the price of gas, it doesn't surprise me.
Hannah, we lost. I can't hear anybody. Is anybody talking?
I can hear you, Terry.
Hello.
I can hear
Technology
everybody.
has failed us.
I can hear.
We can hear you, Terry. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me, Hannah?
Yeah, I can hear you.
It says $5 for residents of the county and 15 for non-residents for the shuttle.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, they attached a fee to it. That's good to know. Thank you. What's
from
new?
June 1st to September 30th.
Okay. You said $5 for residents and 15 for non?
Yeah,
Well, I guess I'll keep talking
15 if you
because
stay all day.
somebody said you can't hear me.
Yeah, we can hear
Uh,
you.
Give me a thumbs up or something if you can hear me talking. Let me know what's up. All right. Okay, I'm going to keep talking then and hope that it's worthwhile. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what my pitch is when I meet people on the mountain as they come up to me. It's pretty simple. I say, hey, hi, how are you doing? Can you wait for a minute and chat with me for just a second? I'm a Peak Steward. I'm a Peak Steward. My name's Terry, and I volunteer with Colorado 14ers Initiative. Colorado 14ers works with the Forest Service to build and maintain trails on the 14ers. And then we like to come out and talk to climbers and let you all know about what we do, and also ask that you do everything you can do to take care of the mountain. And then I run through a little bit of the Leave No Trace stuff. The ones I emphasize are, number one, stay on the trails. We spend a lot of money building and maintaining these trails and a lot of effort, so please use the trails. Stay on the brown, on durable surfaces. If you have to take a break, please don't go take a break in that nice meadow that you're next to. Take your break on something that's already been worn down so that we don't erode any more of the mountain away. If you have to pee, please don't pee on the plants because that might kill them. But more importantly, our urine is very salty. The animals are salt starved. So when we pee on the plants, they come and eat the plants and they kill the plants, which is counterproductive, but that's what happens. I ask people to dispose of everything that they have by bringing it out with them. Don't leave anything on the mountain. And also I always say, and you know, bring out more than you took in if you can, as long as it's not too disgusting or gross. Bring out other people's garbage as well to help keep the mountains clean. Also, of course, if they have a dog, I ask them to make sure they bring out, if their dog poops, that they bring out the feces with them. And I do mention, if they have the equipment with them, if they have to do a bowel movement on the mountain, if they please bring that out with them too. That's always an exciting conversation. If it's not garbage or trash, however, don't bring it out. Leave everything that's natural there if you can. Respect the wildlife. On most of the 14ers, you'll see something. At minimum, you'll see pikas, probably marmots. On some of them, you'll see goats. Please don't bother them, especially if you have a dog. Make sure your dog's on a leash. The one example I always give is that pikas look like tennis balls and sound like squeaky toys, and dogs can't resist them. So please keep your dog on a leash, because the pikas have enough work to do in the summer without having to avoid a dog. And lastly, be considerate of other climbers. Again, the noise that Scott already talked about, keeping your pet under control, all that sort of thing. So those are the things I just cover as quickly as I can. It usually takes me 2 or 3 minutes so people don't feel like I'm slowing them down from making their historic ascent of a 14er. Lastly, again, I will emphasize, please don't, if you can avoid it, don't make your steward days the days that you plan to summit a 14er. Go out there with the one goal in mind, which is to talk to as many people as you can. So get parked somewhere, and as people come by, encourage them to just take a minute to talk with you, to hear all this stuff about how we work to help protect the mountains. And then lastly, the log that we'll ask you to fill out when you get done. You can see a copy of it. You're going to talk more about this later too, aren't you, Hannah?
Yeah, I'll talk about the log in a little bit.
I hope so. Anyway, you can see the information, and a lot of the stuff that I just talked about is on the log there that you want to keep track of as the day goes on. How many people did you see? How many did you actually contact and talk to? I usually, depending on the crowds, I can usually average 50 to 75% of the people I see, I actually talk to. And maybe you can do better than that. Scott talks to everybody who walks by, and some people who aren't even there yet, Scott talks to, because he loves to talk to people. So, and you can see where it asks you to keep track of dogs, how many you saw, how many were on a leash, how many were off a leash. I have never seen a fisherman on any of the 14ers I go to. And you can just go down the list. Never seen a horse, never seen llamas. So usually it's mainly how many people did you see, how many did you talk to, how many dogs did you see, and did you see people unprepared? And then some comments about the weather, that sort of thing. So that's a real quick rundown of what my day looks like. Usually I'm there by 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm usually back in the parking lot by noon at the latest, because by noon you are not going to see very many more people going up the mountain. By then, everybody for the most part has gone. You might see a few day hikers who are going to go up for a picnic a half a mile up the trail, but the people who are there to climb are pretty much gone by noon. So that's it.
Thanks, Terry. And I'll just say
And I still can't hear anything for some reason.
There's no time required for Peak Stewards. If you want to go out for a couple hours, that's great. If you want to go out.
I see a question here. Sorry. Chris asked, do we ever hand out wag bags? I don't. I usually don't take those with me, but certainly you could if you'd like to, and encourage people to use them. I think those are the only other questions. Quandary, I guess, is charging for the shuttle bus now, which will reduce traffic on Quandary, I assume. And I'm hoping Hannah will talk with the sheriff's department up there and maybe get us permission to ride the buses for free as long as we give a presentation while we're on the bus.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's nice when you can talk to folks on the bus because they can't walk away from you. So it's a great technique to hit up all those people that are going to Quandary. So definitely working out the details on that. But I'm going to hand it over to Scott. Scott, are you there?
Am I on?
There you are.
Yay. High tech, you know?
Uh-huh.
So anyway, this is kind of what to expect, right? From everybody that you're going to be talking to. And like Terry said, I do talk to pretty much everybody up there, which is a real surprise to my daughter when she comes climbing with me, because she didn't think I was a very outgoing person in my life, which I really wasn't. But for some reason, stewarding has gotten me to talk to just about everybody out there. So I'll start, like said, at the gathering spots, at the trailheads, at the bathrooms, you know, wherever people are gathering in the beginning. But I do wind up summiting a lot of the times, depending on the weather. I just take my time. I get there real early and I leave real late. I'm kind of like the Walmart greeter, like, hi, come on in, and then scour the mountain on my way down, make sure there's nobody in any kind of trouble or anything like that. But I do wind up on more summits than I not. That I wanted to say that as far as leave no trace, it's amazing. You go up to the top of like Gray's Peak and you find everybody bring those cardboard signs to pose with selfies with, and they leave a stack of them there for, it's like, wow. And not only that, but they all have different altitudes on them. It kind of blew my mind the first time I went through them. It's like, can't you guys get this right? You don't even know how high this mountain is. Anyway, you'll see a stack of them. And I just take those with me on the way down because it's kind of ridiculous. Anyway, interacting with people is our business. A lot of them, especially on the Front Range 14ers, this is their first 14er or their second or maybe even their third. But they're not like the professional 14er climbers that you'll see in the backcountry that really, you know, are there to summit and good climbers and that type of thing. These people have never.
Hey, Scott, there's some sort of scratchy sound coming from your microphone.
Is that mine?
I think so. Oh, there it stopped.
I think somebody was typing or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Probably everybody just wants to make sure their mute's on.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm back.
You're back.
Is it still there or not? All right, cool.
I can hear you now. Thanks.
So you'll meet people from all walks of life, from every situation in life. Most of them have never climbed 14ers before. A lot of them think it's kind of like going into your backyard and gee, if they need like a t-shirt, or that we should have a t-shirt shop set up there, or a burrito stand, or that they can get first aid just like that, and they don't take into account that they're really going to be in the backcountry and be on their own, even though there's like 1,000 people with them at the same time. So you kind of have to meet all these people and explain, gee, thanks for coming to the backcountry. You're going to have a great day. Here's what you need to know. And they'll have a million questions. And then when people are talking to you, other people will see them talking to you, and they'll want to come over and join the parade. Like, oh, hey, what are you guys talking about? And what do we need to know? This is my first time here. And, so you go through the various things about, you shouldn't be wearing cotton, and because when it gets cold out, you're going to freeze to death, or things that we'll talk about later that you can throw at them. It's like, wow, that's really cool. That I know this stuff now. You make sure that they've got enough stuff to survive for the day, at least, some water and some food and some sunblock and, that type of thing. Go down the list with them. Hey, you got this. And then as you're making your way up the mountain, people will just want to chat at you. Hey, what do the CFI folks do anyway? And so that's a good time to advertise us and hook some more people into the Peak Steward, or even to help us out building the trails and that type of thing. I know we've done that a lot. And then as you get higher, you'll run into people who are like stragglers, like they were climbing with somebody and now they're not. I want to call them like divorce climbs or breakup climbs, because their boyfriend or girlfriend said, hey, let's go climb a 14er on this date. And it's like, okay. And then they get up about halfway and one person says, I want to turn around and head back. And the other one says, well, I'm going to the top, and leaves them there sitting on a rock. So you make sure that they're okay and that they can make it down okay. And if not, I've walked quite a few people down quite a ways to get them back to where they need to belong. I've handed out water bottles and things like that, and just say, leave it at the bottom and I'll collect it on the way back. Making sure that they're okay. And Hannah and everybody will talk about what our job is, and as far as not engaging in a medical type of scenario or rescue type of scenario. But, if you come across somebody that's hurting and needs some type of care, you're not going to just trip over and kick them, that type of thing. So I've walked people down with pulmonary edema and things like that. So you'll come across people that are in need of some sort of assistance. Do the best you can and call the authorities. Bring with you some mechanism to contact the authority, either like a spot or an inReach or something like that, and give them a call, rather than try to engage in something that, that's beyond my expertise. So you're going to meet all kinds of people. It's going to be fun. You're going to have a blast. They're going to love you. Most of the people that you meet just think you're wonderful and that CFI is the best. Every once in a while, you'll meet somebody that just kind of like, who do you think you are? And it's like, well, okay, go ahead, go on your way. We'll see you later, and I'll talk to somebody else. Wow, and I can't see the.
Yeah, I just pulled it off for a second to make sure that no one was waiting or trying to get in, or that I hadn't done anything. Okay. So yeah.
So then you'll see a lot of people, what we call them trail cutters. So on the way down, instead of following the windy path that we made going up, they'll come right down the middle of it because it's faster and they enjoy that. You try and intercept them as much as you can and get them to understand that the reason we built the trail the way it is and why they should follow it even on the way down, and not cut through the middle, because it creates another trail that we don't want, and how bad it is for the environment. You will see a bunch of trail cutters, and some of them just kind of flip you off and keep going, in which case, okay, but most people are understanding. Dogs, we've we've talked about dogs already. I love dogs. Obviously, you saw my dog up here. I'm a dog person, but I don't take my dog on 14ers for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's not his habitat. He doesn't belong up there. He's happier if we go hiking. He like loves hiking and camping. But being up on the mountain, I always remind people, hey, that's a 100-pound dog you've got there, and if it breaks its leg, you're going to have a 100-pound dog to carry all the way back down with you, because search and rescue does not come up to rescue your dog. Pay attention to, if you're taking your dog up there, that's great. You're responsible for your dog. And again, I encourage them to keep it on the leash, because there's no, people will say, well, he's voice trained and all that. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but every voice trained dog I ever met will break for one reason or another, and the next thing you know, he's attacking something or somebody or another dog, or that type of thing. It's really not a place that I bring my dog, but I understand that people love climbing with their dogs, so you'll come across that a lot. Talked about people not prepared, not having the right gear, not having the right equipment, not leaving. Like you'll see them up there, you'll be coming down at noon or 1 o'clock, and the clouds are building and they're heading up, and you have a word with them and say, you know what you're doing. Get a feel for, are they first timers, or are they mountaineers and they understand the weather and that type of thing, and maybe how to avoid situations. And if they're not, then you say, the mountain will be here next week, maybe you want to come back, because it's starting to look a little rough. And a lot of the peaks, you can't see what's ahead of you or around the bend from you. You can only see where you are, and it might be beautiful where you are, and then you get up to the top or around the bend or over one of the false summits, and boy, it's just building, and it's going to be a race back down. So you can talk to them about that. And then people have lots of questions. They always have a lot of questions, and you try and answer them the best you can. And the more you do this, the more you'll know, and you'll be able to tell them and guide them in the right thing. It's all teachable moments. I remember I was in the San Juans once, and there was nobody else there. It was really weird. So I went and summited, and there was one other guy. He comes up, and so I hit him up. Hey, this is my chance. I can do my thing. And he looked at my head. He says, "Are you from CFI?" And I says, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, "Well, I'm from the Colorado Mountain Club, and I'm up here stewarding too." It's like, oh, well, let's steward each other. So we both checked each other off. It's like, okay, you give me your spiel, I'll give me yours. And we went about our business. That was a pretty funny deal. But yeah, so, I mean, people will enjoy talking to you. And then they always enjoy seeing people that have something to do with the place. Like, they'll feel uncomfortable being, oh, I'm in the backcountry. What the heck am I doing here? And, you say, hey, you're going to have a great time. It's a guaranteed good time up here. You don't have to summit. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. You can just have a good time. Enjoy the moment and being in the moment. And then, these are the things to watch out for. And if you feel like you can't handle it, have a seat, relax, drink more water, turn around, and head back down. And they will love meeting you. I mean, I can't tell you how many people are just like, wow, you guys are just so cool. I gave $10. I sent in money the other day. So that's about it.
Thanks, Scott. I think it's a really good point, is that most people, I'd say 99% of people, will cheer you on and say thanks for doing what you're doing. And very, very small percentage of people might just move past right on by you, and they don't want to talk to you, and that's okay. And everyone I've noticed over the years, they have their own style and their own way of being a peak steward, and there's no correct way, but it should just always come from the heart and come with kindness and come from a good place rather than a negative place. People respond better when you stay positive and tell them how to improve the situation if they're doing something wrong, and not necessarily scold them, but teach them how to be better. out there. It can feel a little awkward for the first time going out. Sometimes people are like, I just didn't know what to say or do. And that's why it's really nice to go with a mentor for your first time. We're doing in-person training on June 4th, and we'll have some demonstrations and talk to hikers. But if you can't make it, we will also get some mentor dates on the calendar. And I just want to show real briefly here how to add dates to the calendar. Here. Okay. Sorry, I'm terrible at working Microsoft Teams. Okay, can you see my window? I'm on the website. You're going to go to volunteer options, hiker education, Peak Stewards. This is your resource page that I made just for you. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's a link to the handbook. Here's the calendar. Here is the log. If you click this, the log, just go into it. It has this nice little electronic log that you can go through and submit. The handbook is there. There's some safety training video or mountain safety videos and last year's training. I'll put this year's training up there. Loretta's ecology slides, her alpine ecology slides are up here. So let's just go to the calendar. So here is the little form you'd fill out, like I want to go to Mount Bierstadt. And then put in Guanella Pass, put your name in there. I'm gonna go tomorrow at 6 a.m. I'm gonna be there for 3 hours. I am going to be a mentor. At the trailhead. And then submit. And then basically the information will populate on the calendar.
So that's always.
So here's my day. Anyone can go in and look at it and see when they're going to be there. You could put your email in there if you wanted someone to tell you that they're joining you, whatever you want to put in there. Is great. Okay. Stop sharing. Okay, moving right along, we talked about the calendar. We talked about all the resources that are on the website. I encourage you to look at the handbook if you haven't yet. There's stuff about lightning and what to pack, and it just sort of everything that we talked about, it's in there. There's also a great online awareness course at the Leave No Trace website, lnt.org. They redid it over the last 2 years, and it's really great. And I encourage you to check it out if you don't feel very well versed in LNT yet. Our YouTube channel also has a ton of safety videos. We've been doing more alpine ecology videos. There's a marmot series up there that's pretty awesome. So check out our YouTube channel as well if you haven't. I always encourage photos of Peak Stewards. It's difficult to get photos of Peak Stewards because you guys are often alone, which I understand, but they really, really help us secure funding for the Peak Steward program because we need to show people what you're doing out there. Great photos are ones where you can see a Peak Steward with their hat and their name tag on, and they're talking to hikers. So please help me. Every year my boss asks me for Peak Steward photos and I scramble a little bit. We like to arm you with, uniforms, basically, name tags and hats. And I ordered patches this year that can be ironed on and also pinned on. We want you to look official. I'm going to offer probably some pickup days for people that live locally. And for people that do not live locally, I will mail you a hat and a name tag and some materials if you want them. These little trail cards that say "Don't just summit, give back." They're great for folks who say, "How do I volunteer? How do I donate?" You can give them this. It's like a 2x2 card that opens and it has our website in there. Those are great to give out. The Leave No Trace cards are kind of like a plasticky laminated material. I give these to kids. I give them to people that are maybe not following Leave No Trace, just like a gentle reminder. There's also some information on the other side about CFI and CFI's mission. It's kind of a co-branded card with Leave No Trace and CFI. Yeah. So outreach events, I've gotten a lot of questions about if we're doing outreach events, and REI, they are resuming their in-person classes this year. In years past, Peak Stewards have gone to the How to Hike a 14er classes, and they've jumped in for 10 minutes to just talk about CFI and Leave No Trace. So REI, they are doing classes again, but I have not seen any 14er related classes posted to their website or anywhere in Colorado yet. So I will keep you in the loop. I'm sure more classes will pop up as time progresses. We have gone to tons of different events, and if you are invited to an event or hear of an event that we could go to, I will set you up with a table, materials, whatever you need. We've had Peak Stewards go to classrooms already this year. That's been really popular. But I had a Peak Steward call me up and say, I want to go to my local farmer's market every week. And I sent her, our annual reports and stickers, and she had a great time doing it. So I'm totally open to anywhere and everywhere we want to go. Paperwork stuff really quick. Most of you got the waiver and check-in policy to me. If you haven't, please email it back to me. I also need to send the Forest Service. It's a document, a job hazard analysis that will be required by the Forest Service. Thought that was a cute picture of a little pika sitting there. And that is about it. I know it's a lot to go over, and I'm going to send all of this information, everything that I said, kind of steps to peak stewarding. All of that will go out in an email, and kind of a recap, and yeah, I haven't gotten to look at the chat if there are questions. We're running like a little bit behind schedule, so I'll look at those, but I wanted to pass it over to Loretta because she always does a great alpine ecology presentation, and there's really cool new information she would share with me. To Loretta for now, and we'll take like even more questions at the end and have just a conversation if people want to stay and talk. And if you need to go at any point, thanks for being here. Yeah, go ahead, Loretta.
Okay, can you guys see my presentation? It seems to be having a difficult time on my side starting the slideshow.
I can see it. It's not in presentation mode yet, but it's pulled up.
Yep, same.
Okay, wonderful. So hi, I'm Loretta McEllhiney again. I'm the Colorado 14ers Program Manager, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the alpine ecology. It's a very unique ecosystem, and the combination of heavy snowfall, bitter winds, low temperatures, and mountainous topography creates the most severe climate in the world. And the plants and animals who inhabit this ecosystem have been rigorously selected and have adapted to survive. So much of my presentation focuses on the adaptations, and I hope you find it as interesting as I do. Colorado's 14,000-foot mountains are a magnet for recreational use by people from all across the US and the world. The relative ease of climbing these mountains makes them very attractive. Many, if not most of the visitors to this extremely sensitive environment don't understand how sensitive it is, and that just a few footprints, studies show 5 footprints, are enough to destroy the beauty that they have come to enjoy. So the plants in the area. If we're going to change those behavior patterns that are causing that resource impact, we have to educate, and thus the Peak Stewards. I've spent my career in the alpine and know that most people are receptive to learning about the alpine. They don't mean to impact the area. They just don't understand how their actions can protect or destroy this unique ecosystem. My hope is that everyone that hears my presentation will take one thing from it and share it with someone, anyone. Colorado is made up of essentially 5 life zones. There's the grasslands that are sometimes broken into grasslands and semi-desert shrublands, depending on whether you are east or west of the Continental Divide. There's foothills, sometimes broken into the pinyon juniper woodlands in western Colorado and foothills forests in eastern Colorado. There's montane, that's about 6,000 to 9,000 feet. Typically is made up of ponderosa pine, Doug fir, lodgepole limber, and aspen forests. Subalpine, which is Engelmann spruce, subalpine fir, bristlecone pine, limber pine, and lodgepole pine. And then the alpine, which typically starts around 11,500 feet, depending on how north or south you are in the state. Just to put these life zones into a little bit of perspective. So the Denver, Boulder, Pueblo area, those are all grasslands. Golden, Colorado Springs, those are foothills. Bailey, Evergreen, they're foothills / montane. Silverthorne, Aspen, those are montane. Leadville is subalpine. Montrose is desert canyon lands and sage shrublands. And Fruta would be semi-desert shrublands. So Colorado's highest point, I think everybody knows, is Mount Elbert at an elevation of 14,426 feet. Many people think of it as 14,433 feet, but it was edited on the U.S. Geological Survey site on July 15th of 2019. Down to an elevation of 14,426 feet. That means it's only 5 feet higher than my favorite mountain in the state, which is Mount Massive, which is an appropriate name for that mountain. It is a massive mountain. Colorado's lowest point is 3,315 feet above sea level. And that's where the Arickaree River runs into the northwest corner of Kansas. basically right at the tri-state corner of Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. And that, of course, is grasslands. Sometimes it's easier to look at photos. These are not great photos, but of the difference between the vegetation in the different life zones. With increased elevation, we see a temperature decrease, and that temperature decrease is about 3 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit per 1,000 feet, depending on the atmospheric conditions. So it's greater when sunny. And so as you increase in elevation, there's less air above you, thus the pressure decreases. And as the pressure decreases, the air molecules spread out further. So the air expands, making it a little tougher to breathe up there because even those oxygen molecules are more dispersed, and the temperature decreases. If the humidity is at 100% because it's raining or snowing, the temperature decrease is going to be more slow than if it's sunny. And of course, precipitation increases, and the growing season is dramatically decreased, typically to 3 months or less. One of the things that has come out recently are some graphs like this one, showing that with increased temperatures and precipitation changes that are predicted and are starting to happen, the changes in those life zones. So you're going to see a major increase in that montane life zone and a significant decrease in our alpine, which makes it even more rare. Like I said before, the combination of heavy snowfall, bitter winds, low temperatures, and mountainous topography makes the alpine the most severe climate in the world. The alpine makes up about 3% of Colorado's landmass, or approximately 1% of the lands in the contiguous US. I have, just for your reference, I have a couple favorite books that I'm gonna try and show you. I'm not sure how, because I can't see my camera, but I want to show you Joyce Gellhorn's The Song of the Alpine. It's a great, very layman book on the alpine. And then The Land Above the Trees by Anne Zwinger. And those are two favorite books that I use as reference. I carry them with me in my truck, not necessarily in my backpack, but I do carry them with me when I'm out in the woods, and just remind myself of some of the unique aspects of the alpine. And there's a couple quotes I love from those books. Nothing between you and the sky, no filtering haze, no dulling pollution, constant wind, breathless. And that's an Anne Zwinger quote. And then Joyce Gellhorn says there is no in-between in the alpine environment. And for humans who live in an in-between sized world, comprehension takes time. So the alpine ecosystem is beautiful, but it can be very harsh. There is constant wind. There's winds have been recorded at over 200 miles per hour in the alpine, and 75 mile per hour winds are common. There's low effective precipitation. So you remember in that slide before where I said precipitation increases as elevation increases. But you have to think about most of that precipitation comes in the form of snow. And when wind meets snow, most of that snow is blown off the mountain and down into the trees, making the precipitation ineffective. So this next winter, watch the mountains and you'll see proof of that action. There's twice as much UV radiation, so don't forget your sunscreen, and 25% more light than at sea level. So that clarity of light actually confuses one's senses of scale. So faraway mountains are so sharp and clear that they seem closer. And that can be something to talk about with members of the public when you're out there, when they go up Mount Belford and they're thinking, well, I'm going to go grab Mount Oxford. And they're on Mount Oxford and they see Missouri right there. And they think, I'm going to go grab Missouri. I have to tell you, I've only done that trip twice in my career, and it is a very long day. So that extreme wash of light and the intensity of that full light spectrum can also give you a sense of euphoria. And I hope you all experience that, because I love that aspect of the Alpine. The temperature extremes, so the mean annual temperature in the Alpine is about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Records show temperatures as cold as 70 degrees below zero. So combine that with wind chill, you couldn't expose your skin at that temperature without instant frostbite. Even with temperatures of minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit and a wind speed of 15 miles per hour, the wind chill is 45 degrees below zero. With those temperatures, exposed flesh can freeze in 60 seconds. So, of course, all of these factors lead to a significantly reduced growing season, typically 3 months or less, and challenges for the flora and fauna that call the Alpine home. So I'm going to talk about some of the adaptations of both flora and fauna. Life survives at the outer and upper extremes in the Alpine environment because it's been rigorously selected and has adapted to those harsh conditions. The more severe the environmental conditions, the more pronounced are the adaptations for plant and animal survival. And some of the plant adaptations I'm going to address are chemical adaptations, short stature, preformation of buds, perennial growth forms, leaf and flower orientation, and dense pubescence. So let's go into chemical adaptations. So a large part of the alpine plant population is marked by a distinctive red color, and that is the anthocyanins pigments in the stems and leaves. It's the same pigment that makes red apples red. Anthocyanin reds can range from the red purple of red cabbage to the orange red of poppies, the lavender of violets, and the blue of cornflowers, depending on whether the plant sap is acid, meaning it's going to pick up those red hues, or alkaline, it's going to pick up those blue hues. And as we all know, plant pigments are always present, but are usually masked by the greater amount of chlorophyll and are therefore only visible when the chlorophyll is reduced or absent, or the other pigments are in greater abundance. So in most alpine plants, the redness only appears in those cells that are exposed to light. A common plant in the alpine is the alpine avon, which shows in that left picture, both pictures, sorry, and so they have like origami folded leaves, and when the leaves are spread open, they're green on the inside. But when they're released and they resume their complex folding, only the red shows. And check that out next time you're up there, especially in the spring and fall. And they are most pronounced, those colors are most pronounced in the springtime before photosynthesis is fully operative in the leaves. The anthocyanins are a product of the carbohydrate that is stored in the roots from the previous growing season. So when rapid growth begins in early spring, part of those carbohydrates that are stored are incorporated into new plant tissue and part into anthocyanins. In photosynthetic tissues, anthocyanins act as a sunscreen, protecting the cell from the high light damage by absorbing the blue-green light rays and protecting the tissue from photoinhibition or high light stress. And here's the real mind blower, is that the anthocyanins are capable of converting incidental light rays into heat to warm the plant tissues. And that's very important in the chilly temperatures of the alpine spring. Those plants that have an abundance of anthocyanins endure cold better than greener plants. And anthocyanin production is an important factor in cold hardiness, which is an essential adaptation at high altitudes. The red coloration of leaves may camouflage the leaves from herbivores that are blind to red wavelengths or signal unpalatability, since anthocyanin synthesis often coincides with synthesis of unpalatable phenolic compounds. Okay, so it protects the plant not only from light rays, but also from grazing by herbivores. So in the fall, before the leaves fall off the plant and they close up shop for the year, they want to pull in as much sugar and nutrients as possible from their leaves to store it down in those taproots, which is where the anthocyanins come in again. The prevailing theory is that those anthocyanins protect the leaves from the excess sunlight and enable those plants to store those last remaining nutrients. And some years you'll see that those reds are more intense than in other years. And that has to do with the amount of sunlight and dry weather, which will increase that sugar concentration in the plants, triggering the plants to release more anthocyanins in that last-ditch effort to gather up all the energy they can to get through the winter. Full adaptation. So another adaptation is dwarfism or short stature. Almost all alpine plants are tiny in size. We often say that the best way to observe the alpine is to lie on your belly. It's a good way for humans to view those tiny plants, since that wind speed and pressure increases with height above the ground. So the environment is colder and windier at a person's height than at a plant's height. So less wind, more radiation makes it warmer. So the small size is advantageous to keep those plants snug down close to the ground outside of the worst of the alpine weather. It also requires less energy for the production of plant tissue, so that more energy can be utilized for seed development. That dwarfing typically involves only the growth shoots or the green parts of the plants, making the flowers seem larger in proportion. So this is another cool adaptation of many alpine plants. Many alpine plants create flower buds that begin earlier in the previous year's growing season, sometimes several years before, and are usually well formed by the end of the summer so that they can safely be protected before winter sets in. The studies of the alpine buttercup shown in this picture pinpoint a cell that eventually gave rise to the yellow flower. It formed the first year. It divided many times the second growing season. It formed a bud during the third growing season and eventually bloomed in the fourth summer. So pre-formation of buds means that those buds are standing ready to burst forward at the first sign of warming temperatures. Early flowering leaves a major part of the meager summer for ripening of seeds. That's a process which requires heat, the ripening of seeds. But flowering does not. The alpine has a very short growing season, as I've said, so the growth of the plant as well as the setting and ripening of seeds requires the warmth of summer. But with the preset bud formation, the flower does not require the full warmth of summer. This allows for that maximum time to ensure that the seeds have plenty of time to ripen, thus protecting plant reproduction. So I talked a lot about that storage of carbohydrates, and the early growth is made possible also by that storage of the large amounts of starches and sugars stored as carbohydrates in the below ground parts of plants. Alpine plants are a little like icebergs. A tiny percentage of the plant is above the ground, much like the small percentage of an iceberg that shows above the surface of the ocean. When the plant is dormant during the winter's low temperatures, the reserve of starches and sugars are not reduced. As temperatures warm in the spring, the accumulated carbohydrates are converted for rapid growth. During this period, the plant is using its food faster than it can be made through photosynthesis, so carbohydrate stores are depleted. Many alpine plants grow at a deficit until its growth is about 75 to 90% complete for the season. Then the plant growth or expansion slows and the stores are replenished. By the onset of dormancy in the fall, the underground carbohydrates are back up to the highest level of the year. This knowledge actually helps us in our alpine restoration efforts. We attempt to do transplanting during the spring and fall when the roots contain substantial carbohydrate stores to help that plant establish itself and fight that stress of being moved and exposed to the elements, even briefly. So perennial growth form. Most alpine plants are perennial. A perennial plant lives more than 2 years. An annual plant germinates, flowers, and dies in a single year. The perennial growth is an advantage to the alpine plants because it would be very difficult for an alpine plant seed to germinate, produce leaves, produce stems, flowers, and seeds for a new crop of plants within a short growing season. It puts annual plants at a significant disadvantage when competing for nutrients, space, and water, especially considering drought cycles. A perennial plant can just add to what is already established, depends on a stable root system, and is able to survive without flowering if the season is particularly bad. Maybe this year will be one of those bad years where we'll see less alpine flower production, only because our winter has been pretty dry, and especially down in the southwest portion of the state. So in the alpine, some plants are 10 to 15 years old before they ever flower. The old man of the mountain, shown here in that right picture, spends its first 6 to 8 years of life producing only leaves and storing reserves in its thick underground root. When enough carbohydrate accumulates, the floral buds develop, and the following year, the plant blooms. The seeds mature, and the plant dies. Unlike sunflowers at lower elevations, which are annuals, the alpine sunflower compensates for that short, cold summer by being a long-lived perennial. Another interesting way the alpine buttercup improves its chances of survival is by using that intense ultraviolet radiation available in the alpine to its advantage. I mentioned before that the production of viable seeds requires heat. Can you see how shiny the petals are on this plant? This amazing little plant is using its shiny petals to reflect sunlight onto the developing seeds and can raise the internal temperature of the flower 12 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit. It also attracts pollinators who are seeking that warmth. The viviparous bistort has the potential to produce in two different ways. These plants form vegetated bulbils along its spike and white flowers at its tip. Although the flowers have the potential of producing seeds, the viable seeds from this plant have never been reported in the Rocky Mountains. Instead, those tiny bulbils drop from the parent plant and establish themselves immediately, sometimes sprouting before they even shed from the parent plant, as you can see in that one showing on my dirty hand. These plants essentially give life birth. So leaf and flower orientation, there are whole habitats that exist in the alpine environment known as cushion plant communities. These plants are the perfect example of leaf and flower adaptations in alpine plants. The small, low-growing mats allow the wind to flow over them, much like the wind over an airplane wing. At the same time, there's maximal exposure of the leaf surface for photosynthesis. Temperatures are often several degrees higher on the inside of those cushion plants than on the outside. The colder it is outside, the greater the difference has been found to be. The outer parts of that cushion plant slows the impact of the wind on the inner parts and reduces the drying effect. You can see in this photo where the outside of the plant was wind or frost burned. Oh, actually, that's on my next picture. You'll see often on the cushion plants that the outside, especially in the spring, you'll see where the outside is frost burned, killing a portion of the plants. But the tightly packed branches really protect that taproot. So this plant is the big rooted spring beauty, very common in the alpine. It has a rosette growth. And so it also, if you look closely, you'll see that the leaves of this plant are actually succulent, much like a desert plant. So it ensures that the moisture is not decreased as much as a normal leaf of a plant would be. So those interior cells in a succulent plant are slightly mucilaginous, and unlike a watery sap of most plants, very similar to desert plants like cactus or aloe vera or jade or something like that. So here's the picture of the cushion plants. You can see that some of these plants on the outside have been sun or wind burned. Cushion plants that are 4 inches in diameter are about 40 years old and have about a 6-foot taproot. That root stores those abundant carbohydrates and also probes for deep water sources and anchors that plant against those constant winds. These pictured are closer to 10 to 12 inches across, making them approximately 100 to 120 years old and likely have taproots of about 20 feet. So the alpine forget-me-not, this is my favorite little alpine plant, is a good example of a plant with dense pubescence. Those these densely pubescent plants, they look kind of pale green. That softness is even more distinctive when the plant is not in bloom. So beneath those various coatings, this plant is as green as any lowland plant. The hairs are known as pubescents. Those hairs protect the plant's stomata, which are the pores through which a plant breathes. The hairs will diffuse that strong alpine sunlight, reducing both the intensity and the directness of that reaches the leaf surface, since the light levels on a mountaintop are so much more intense than they are at sea level. Although that intensity of light is not sufficient to upset photosynthesis, it can cause cell damage if combined with that high reflection from rock or snow surfaces. Those same insulating hairs can measurably reduce water loss through the stomata. And that's, of course, immensely valuable in those sparse moisture, high wind environments of the alpine. So while the hairs will reflect visible light rays, they actually trap heat rays, warming the surface of the plant in a greenhouse-like effect. When the alpine forget-me-not is in bud, that bud looks like a little elfin earmuff. Because of that furriness, the alpine forget-me-not is one of the earliest flowering plants at very high elevations. I can guarantee if you get up in high elevation right now, you'll see some blooming forget-me-nots. So some alpine, sorry, this isn't a great photo. One of these days I'm going to get a better photo of an alpine poppy. It's actually a rare plant in the alpine. They have dark hairs on their buds, which absorb even more heat than those white hairs, and it warms that developing flower inside. So genetic sequencing is something new that's coming about in alpine environments. The Rocky Mountains harbor potentially many plant species that were not known before. So this is one of them. This was found in formally named in 2022, but found in 2021. It is up on Mount Sherman, and it is Cirsium funkiae, or funky thistle, and it was determined to be a separate species than other alpine thistles by research done this past year. And it's pretty cool that with the sequencing, we're probably going to see a lot more species than we've ever seen before. So non-flowering plants, lichens and mosses, they are pretty common in the alpine. They have minimal requirements for survival. Lichens are formed by a fungus and an alga. The fungus forms the tough outer layers, while the inner layers contain algal cells enmeshed in fungal threads. The fungus provides the physical structure, while the algae provides food through photosynthesis. They have the ability to absorb more than their own weight of water when precipitation occurs. And anyone who has traveled across a densely lichened talus slope during or shortly after a rainstorm will know just how slick those plants are. The lichens play a role in ecosystem hydrology by retaining moisture. They also play a role in carbon and nitrogen cycling, and some of them are used by animals for food or nesting materials. Lichens are at risk with climate change. New studies show that the algae part of many common lichens can't adapt to temperature changes as fast as the Earth is warming. Scientists found that this alga can take hundreds of thousands of years to adapt to the changes in temperature that we expect to see over the course of this century. That means that these lichens are in dire trouble when it comes to climate change. Mosses too are sponge-like. Mosses curl their leaves really tightly against their stem when they're dry, like in that first picture. They unfold them to absorb moisture through the whole leaf surface during rain or heavy dew. Mosses and lichens are non-vascular plants that absorb water and nutrients mainly through their leaves and harvest carbon dioxide and sunlight to create food through photosynthesis. Mosses and lichens reproduce using spores, not seeds, and they have no flowers. So grasses and sedges. Grasses and sedges are common in the alpine. They have really narrow leaves and stems that are not likely to be torn by alpine winds. Their flowers are reduced to the essentials. There's no bright petals or cupped sepals. They just reproductive parts enclosed in a simple protective envelope. Okay, so here's the test. And since you are all muted, I will just have to trust that you get them right. The adaptation of this plant, pubescence and dwarfism. This plant, leaf orientation, that rosette form, and succulents. This plant, alpine avens, chemical adaptations, anthocyanins. In this plant, both the preformation of buds and the heating of seeds by reflecting of UV rays. So, fauna. Animals have adapted to the harsh alpine environment. Some ways they do that, their life cycles may be stretched over several seasons. Their larval stages being accomplished over several summers instead of a month. Litters and broods are typically reduced in the summer to usually one. Maturation is at a quick rate. Insects. Okay, so black flies, mosquitoes, grasshoppers, ladybugs, we see them all in the alpine. Insects are extremely important pollinators in the alpine, especially flies. At lower altitudes, and I'm sure many of you are up there like, why am I covered in flies? But at lower altitudes, bees are the primary pollinators, but bees are immobilized at temperatures below 50 degrees. So with their lower energy requirements and abilities to work in really restricted conditions, flies assume considerable importance in the alpine region. Pay attention to the bees up in the alpine. You'll see them. They'll be up there and they'll be flying along, doing their pollinating, and a cloud comes over, blocks the sun, and they will drop to the ground and sit down in the ground, shaking and buzzing and shaking and buzzing, trying to raise their body temperature. The sun comes back out and that bee will fly away. But at 50 degrees, they are immobilized, and thus the falling from the air to the ground. Of course, reptiles and amphibians are not really seen in the alpine. The summer is so short and the temperatures are too cold for cold-blooded reptiles and amphibians to live there. So during the summer, you may find a western terrestrial garter snake or maybe even a tiger salamander, but it is pretty rare. So birds in the alpine. The number of birds in the alpine is relatively small. This is the only bird that lives on the alpine all year. It is the ptarmigan and is a perfect example of Bergman's law. Animals in cold climates tend to be larger and have a better ratio of volume to exposed area, making it easier for them to maintain heat. The adult ptarmigan can sit out a storm in relative security. They typically will nestle down into the snow in a group so that individuals lose very little of their body heat. In that tight circle, they expose even less surface in proportion to their mass. In addition, ptarmigan legs and feet are so heavily feathered, especially in the winter, that they look like they're wearing little pantaloons, and it gives them both foot warmth and snowshoes to cross the snow. This one's just changing over from its winter to summer plumage. They will be fully white in the wintertime. So how many ptarmigan can you find in this picture? There are at least 4, okay? Ptarmigan's protection is camouflage, and they're natural predators in the alpine, which are birds of prey. They hunt by sight. So because these ground nesting birds will stand still when they feel threatened, they are really easy prey for an off-leash dog. You can see from this photo just how exposed their nests are to the threat of off-leash dogs. So large mammals, bighorn sheep, elk, and mountain goats are regulars in the alpine tundra. Even these animals will only remain above tree line in the winter if they are forced to, because grazing opportunities are pretty limited. So mountain goats, there's no evidence that mountain goats inhabited Colorado in historical times. They should be considered non-native to the state, and many authorities consider them to be an introduced species in Colorado. They're sure-footed and agile creatures. They're at home on rocky ridges, precipitous cliffs, and high alpine tundra, seeking high altitudes to avoid predators. Their hooves are adapted to the rugged slopes by being really flexible, kind of like rubber, so they can jump from rock to rock. They're herbivores. They'll eat grasses, herbs, sedges, ferns, mosses, lichens, twigs, leaves, and such. They have a thick white coat of fur to keep them warm in the winter, and they'll shed one of those layers during the summer seasons. So you'll often see them with big clumps of fur that they are shedding. The skeleton of the mountain goat is so arranged that they can put all 4 of their hooves onto a ledge that is only 6 inches long and 2 inches wide. That's smaller than a dollar bill. Mountain goats are not actually goats. They're related to antelope and are part of the Bovidae family. The males are called billies, the females are called nannies, and the babies are called kids. They change their social grouping seasonally. They'll live in big groups in the winter and smaller groups or alone in the summer. The male goats are dominant only during breeding season, and females are dominant the rest of the year. The mountain goats' hierarchies are determined very early by the kids' playing behavior. The stronger, more dominant kids will become the leaders of the group. Based on observations of interactions between mountain goats and bighorn sheep, mountain goats are often more aggressive and the dominant species and appear to have the capability of displacing bighorn. They have sharp horns that can puncture the sides of other goats or even bighorns. They can also be quite aggressive to humans, so try to keep your distance, or they might just help themselves to your food, and they are extremely enticed by the salts in your urine. So, suitable bighorn habitat are steep, broken terrain, which serves as escape cover and vegetation. Suitable bighorn habitat are steep and broken terrain. It serves for escape. They are typically only found in areas with high visibility and forage, such as in grasslands or in the alpine tundra. They're primarily grazers, but also will consume browse if they need to. They have special hooves, which provides that attachment to the rock. So again, they rubber-like, they can jump from rock to rock. They have an excellent sense of balance and very strong legs. It helps them to climb those steep rocky mountains. They are not well adapted to deep snow. Therefore, winter snowpack can really limit their distribution and survival. Their digestive system acts as a survival mechanism. They have a complex 4-part stomach that allows them to gain nutrients from hard, dry forage. They'll go and eat large amounts of vegetation very quickly and then retreat back to the protection of the cliffs and the ledges. They can then thoroughly rechew and digest their food away from possible predators. So the brooming is the term that is used to describe that chipping and fraying of their horns. It's usually caused by fighting. Some brooming may be caused by accidents or by digging. The rams achieve full curl at about 7 or 8 years of age. Lambs are born in April through July. We're in the peak season right now, late May, early June. A single lamb is the norm. Lambs can climb as well as their mothers when they are only a day old. Ewes will usually live about 10 to 12 years, and rams seem to have a somewhat higher mortality rate. And it might be because in the fall, the rams will compete for ewes by having butting contests. They'll charge at each other at speeds of more than 20 miles per hour. Their foreheads crashing with a crack that can be heard a mile away. These battles can last as long as 24 hours. Those Rocky Mountain bighorn ram horns can weigh as much as 30 pounds. That's more than the weight of their other bones in their body combined. The females also have horns, but they're quite a bit smaller. The development of Colorado's high country has increasingly blocked bighorn migration, and it's weakening the herds by denying them genetic diversity. If you have difficulty remembering the difference between goat and sheep, there's a very cute video available on YouTube from Banff National Park that explains the difference between mountain goats and bighorn sheep. Just look up Banff National Park sheep and goat song and you'll find it. Small mammals. There are significantly more small mammals that remain in the alpine all year. They survive the winter by either storing food through hibernation or incessant hunting. The pika, they are small members of the rabbit family. And like I think Terry said, or Scott, one of them, they look a little bit like little tennis balls and sound like squeaky toys. Their ears have been diminished in size to small round ones that are not as likely to freeze as the rabbit's ears. So ears, tails, and other extremities are subject to rapid heat loss, reducing, so they're often reduced or missed on animals that live in cold climates. In addition, they have fur on the soles of their feet that provides both a non-skid device aiding their purchase on rock and helps keep them warm. Pika dens are often discovered by the little Putian stacks of hay that are at their doorsteps. Pikas begin preparing food for winter by mid-July and continue until all available food is snow-covered. Do you remember me talking about those anthocyanins in plants? Well, here's the continuation of that cycle. Pica gather inordinate amounts of alpine avens because those anthocyanins help to prevent mold and bacterial growth in those food stores. Until the plants are dry, those anthocyanins are poisonous to pica. Pica's vegetarian diet is not very high in calories, and a pica has to fill its stomach almost hourly to meet its energy needs. They're highly sensitive to warm temperatures in the summer and are thought to select talus habitats to provide that cool refuge from the warmer summer months. Increasing summer temperatures may be particularly dangerous to pica, as extended exposure to temperatures above 80 degrees can be lethal. While pica can regulate their temperatures by resting under the talus, those increasing summer temperatures could reduce their ability to collect enough vegetation to survive the winter months, considering that they have to fill their stomach every hour, even during the winter. It also reduces the ability of the juvenile pica to leave the talus where they were born to find new territory. Pica can die in 6 hours if exposed to temperatures above 77.9 degrees Fahrenheit, if they can't find refuge from the heat. So if they're out harvesting and you're sitting on their talus slope and they don't feel comfortable coming back home, they could actually be, it could be lethal to them. So during the midday and at lower elevations, they'll typically become inactive and withdraw into those cooler talus openings. Where humans can withstand body temperature increases of 8 degrees Fahrenheit, pica body temperature increases of only 2 to 3 degrees are lethal. In order to obtain the maximum food value, pica, like rabbits, are able to re-ingest their fecal matter, which is high in protein content and has energy value. They've been observed to be active during every month of the year, and there is no evidence that they hibernate. They have to spend the months of July through September storing enough food for 9 to 10 months of winter. Pica female will give birth to a litter in the spring. She will immediately get pregnant again. And if that first litter doesn't survive because of predation, cold, disease, she'll deliver that second litter. If the first litter does survive, her body reabsorbs those fetuses. Marmot, like ptarmigan, are comparatively large animals. They're relatives of woodchucks, and they eat themselves fat in the summer and hibernate all winter. Their body temperatures often sinking to almost 32 degrees Fahrenheit. They emerge in the spring, sprawling on a warm rock surface in what seems to be blissful enjoyment of sunshine and warmth. So, although all these plants and animals have adapted well to that harsh environment, they've not adapted well to the presence of human and especially our off-leash dogs. And especially those large numbers that are seeking the 54 high points in Colorado, known as the 14ers. That's why I share this information. I don't know how many times you will or have heard people say, oh, the trail is slick, I'm going to walk on the grass. Now you have the knowledge to explain that it isn't really grass like we have in our neighborhood parks. Those plants, insects, and animals that live in the alpine live at the outer and upper extremes in that environment because they've been rigorously selected and have adapted to that harsh environment. But they've not adapted to the presence of human. Like I said before, as few as 5 footprints on those alpine plants can destroy them, leading to plant loss and eventual erosion. We need to recognize that we're visiting their homes, and try not to destroy it. So stay on the trails, the brown stuff. Keep your distance from wildlife. Keep your dog on a leash. Never feed wildlife. Keep your voice low and your music off or in earphones so that others can experience the joys of nature. Carry out your waste and your dog waste from the alpine environment. There's not the bacteria in the alpine to break down human waste in a reasonable amount of time. And I think I've proven that these plants and animals have enough to deal with. So in the words of the Lorax, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Thank you.
Aw, I love that. I'm getting an echo.
That's probably because I'm still on. I'm trying to get my computer to think. There we go.
Great. That was awesome, Loretta. Every year I learn something, and I'm just blown away by how cool the alpine is and how lucky and how grateful I am to have access to it. Such a special place. It's just so cool. And Loretta is basically the original Peak Steward, and she's the reason why CFI really even got started. You're definitely an inspiration, Loretta. She also designs all of our trails, if you didn't know. So you're a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate having you at CFI. There's a couple questions for you in the chat. Joan wants to know, after the old man of the mountain flowers, it dies?
Yeah, I know, that's really sad. I am often in the alpine and I see the old man of the mountain blooming, and I know that's its last year, but it does ripen its seeds and provides for reproduction of plants. But yes, 6 to 8 years of just building its plant structure. That last year it'll bloom, and then that plant dies.
Yeah, it's kind of bittersweet. You see a beautiful flower and you're like, well, there it goes. And how long it takes to build that flower, build enough energy just to flower, and that's it. It's pretty fascinating. And then the other question, Loretta, I don't know if you saw it. Is it unusual to see a mom fox and little baby foxes at Silver Dollar Lake?
No, they'll actually, it's fairly common to see fox in the alpine, especially during the warmth of the season. And they are also predators for things like ptarmigan, and they belong there. And if a ptarmigan or a ptarmigan nest is destroyed by a fox in the area, that's a little different than people bringing their dogs. And I also am a dog lover. I love running and hiking and skiing with my dog, but she doesn't go in the alpine. There is no way I could control her, especially off leash, to protect the flora and fauna in the alpine. So foxes, we're seeing them more and more up in the alpine, and I have to believe that has to do with our rising temperatures.
Thanks, Loretta. I feel like I could just sit here and ask you questions all day. And I don't want to keep everyone here on a beautiful sunny Saturday. and really, really appreciate everyone's time. I can't thank you enough for being here and being a part of the Peak Steward program. I always say we can go out and build beautiful trails, but if people don't stay on them and do the right thing while they're out there, then there's really no point to it all. The Peak Steward program is incredibly important to our mission. It closes the loop essentially. So you're a very valuable part of the team, basically. And I need to get all the new people name tags, I know, and hats. It's really helpful to me if you just send me an email that says I need a hat and a name tag and send it here. I will also send an email with information about the training date coming up again, mentor dates. I'll send those as returning stewards, put some mentor dates on the calendar. I will put out the 2022 priority peaks list for everybody. So more email to come, or more info to come in an email. I know I'll see some of you at the training on June 4th, and I'm really looking forward to that. We haven't done an in-person Peak Steward training in a really long time. I know this is a lot of information to go over in 2 hours just about the program. So if you're new, I encourage you to send me whatever questions you have, or pair up with a returning steward for your first time. It's really nice to see somebody in person, kind of just go through the spiel and like how they interact with hikers and what they say about CFI. So yeah, and many thanks to Scott and Terry for helping me all these years with training. You guys are great. Yeah, if anyone else has questions, please stay on, type them in the chat, send me an email. I'm always here for you and appreciate all your support.
And I did put my contact information in the chat, so feel free to contact me. During the summer, of course, I'm often out in the woods and sometimes don't have cell coverage or access to any emails, but I do try and check it whenever I get into town. So.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say a question I had about an unexpected issue that I ran into a couple of times last year doing Steward Days was really large groups, and specifically large groups doing fundraisers. And typically in like wilderness areas where group sizes are limited. Is there, as far as, and I know like I've already, one of the ones that I participated in myself last year has already announced intention to do it again, to have another fundraising year where they're having large groups specifically in wilderness areas where group size is supposed to be limited. Is there someone would it be good protocol to put those groups in touch with someone from CFI ahead of time so that they know, sort of maybe have an overall glimpse of what good stewardship looks like while they're out on the mountains, or just to help them potentially pick better locations or think about the way those fundraisers are structured? Just, is there a good protocol or a good policy for going about doing that for those large groups?
It's a great question. And I remember your email from last year, and I had actually reached out to Loretta because it was like, there's some crazy things out there with 75 people. And yeah, Loretta, maybe you are the best person to comment on this. It's difficult because we don't have like a ton of authority, but obviously when they're in wilderness, they should be in groups of, it's typically 15 or less. And if it's more, then they need to be separated by sight and sound. But Loretta, maybe do you want Peak Steward, like could Carrie send you an email and say, I saw this group of 100, they're gonna go hike Mount Massive? Or
Please send me an email. Let me know if you know the name of the group, where they were, maybe an estimated number of people. You know, large groups, and especially if they're fundraising on public lands, need to be permitted. And so I know permit administrators, so if I get that information, I forward it on to our permit administrators so that they know. If it's really egregious, I'm probably also going to send it out to law enforcement. If you can in any way get a person's name or a picture to send along with your information, that would be awesome. Okay, because our law enforcement folks may need to contact those groups, and our permit administrators are definitely going to want to contact those groups.
Okay, that's super helpful. I ran into I think on each steward day I did last year, I had a different group that was doing, there was one that was for, it was literally 150 people that were climbing Mount Sherman all together in a group. So that is super helpful information. And I know one of the ones that I worked with outside of CFI to do fundraising last year did seem to have a good knowledgeable approach of wanting to stagger their start times and spread their groups out. But again, still that was on Mount Massive and in the Mount Massive wilderness. So I think maybe just even giving them the tools to be more aware might be helpful. So that's good to know that there's a route to do that. And I will I already know of one that's planning another trip on Elbert and Massive later this summer. I'll shoot you that information so you guys have it.
Thank you. That would be really helpful. Like I said, we're pretty thinly spread, and our hiring did not go well this year, and so we're going to have even fewer Forest Service people out in the woods this year. Our hiring was less than 50% of the available positions, and so it's going to be a challenging year out there.
Hey, Hannah, on another subject, Joan had asked if she's still on about counting cars and said sometimes that's difficult. I wonder if she could say a little more about that. Maybe we can help figure out.
Yeah, I mean, I know what she means. Like sometimes people are coming and going, or the cars are like way down the street, or they're parked in really strange places. And it's like, I don't know if they're hiking or camping or, or it's just a lot of cars to count, which can be the other part. Joan, what are you kind of experiencing?
I just, we never get a sense of accuracy, especially because we go up to Bierstedt a lot. You can count maybe 75 cars in the morning, and then like you said, Hannah, you're leaving in the afternoon sort of, and there's like, how do you count cars on both sides of the road and in the upper parking lot, and they're all over. So, it just doesn't, it's that sense of inaccuracy, I guess. So I don't, just feeling like it's not accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I know, go ahead. I go to Bierstedt a lot, and I mean, what I do is obviously with the coming and going, there's not much you can do about that. You just sort of say at this point in time, I'm going to do the best I can. And I usually walk through the upper lot and count the cars, and walk through the lower lot and count those cars. And then I'm sure much to the chagrin of other drivers, I start at the top of the pass and just drive really slowly down the road going, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to that black car, and 1 to that car, and then I just go. And I'm sure it's not 100% accurate, but I know it's pretty close. So that's what I do. But yeah, and you're right. Sometimes you're driving a half mile down the road counting cars. It's nuts.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, I mean, do your best. It doesn't have to be perfect. And really the most important thing that I look at are the hiker contacts. That is really the most measurable thing of what we're doing to make a difference. So hiker contacts and number of people that are out there. I always look at the trail conditions too, and it's really nice. Like I had a Peak Steward tell me there was a tree down on Quandary, and I was like, I'm going out there tomorrow. And I took a saw and cut the tree out. So, and if they hadn't told me that, we probably wouldn't have taken a saw or a handsaw. So, just little tips like that are really helpful and great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have is Joan still on? Joan, do you have a clicker? Have one of
We
these?
do.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
I sometimes will use it and I'll just click as I'm looking at the cars and
Right.
it's less to remember if I pause or whatever. So yeah, the clicker is great, but it's still hard.
Yeah, it's not so much the difficulty of counting, it's the wondering if, you know, the numbers that we give you are helpful because they're probably very inaccurate. Does
Yeah,
that make sense? There's a difference between being hard. It's not hard to do it.
Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really just do your best. It's interesting information to have and shows how much of a parking issue there could be at some of these places.
Gotcha.
But yeah, really, like if your time is limited, focus on the hiker contacts and making a difference. And if you don't get to counting every single car in the parking lot, that is okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I just want to quickly say, Loretta, you're amazing. This part of the training is great. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone loves to hear about the animals and the adaptations just blow me away. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it's an amazing environment. And
Yeah.
wow. And like, can you imagine, you know, trying to live up there year round and fill your stomach every hour? Like, whoa, how do you collect enough?
Well, you know, I've got to say, Loretta, that the fleshing out of the details of those little plants and those little animals. I mean, I spent half my life up there in the alpine, didn't know any of that stuff. I know that when I was 5, I stepped on the tundra and I got a spanking that lasted the rest of my life. My dad said, "Don't ever do that again." And he shoved my face right down in the dirt almost. And he said, "See these little tiny flowers? It took them 500 years to get here. And you just snuffed their little life out, you little bastard." And spanked me. So trauma. I've been in therapy my whole life to get over that, you know. But I'll tell you this, that it just adds a richness to the experience up there, understanding what's going on the lower level. I mean, I've seen those little pikas with their mouth full of that little grass, and I didn't know what they were doing. I thought they were just munching lunch. I didn't know that they spent 3 months stockpiling. I mean, that's interesting stuff, and that's stuff everybody would want to know that's up there on the mountain, I think.
You're right. And you know, when I am up there and I'm talking to people, they're fascinated. They are just fascinated, but we don't teach this stuff in our schools. Luckily the biology teacher at Lake County High School lets me come in and do some alpine ecology with their students, but very few people are learning this. And you know, it takes a lot to read all these books and figure it all out, you know, and so in an hour I can teach you a lot. And I wish I had more opportunity, but I have a couple other job duties.
Wow.
Maybe when I retire.
We need Camp Loretta. I'll go.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe Randy's dad too. Too bad we can't do that.
Right?
Hikers what Randy's dad did to him.
Oh,
He
awesome.
was an early badass. He was in the backcountry in the 50s in an old Willys Jeep, and that's where I grew up, was in the back of an old FJ around that frying pan heater, freezing my ass off because he never had a roof on, never had the doors on. He wanted the full lightning bolt experience at 12,000 feet. He thought it was awesome. He was a crazy man, but he just loved the alpine. He just couldn't get enough of it. He just died 2 months ago. So, and he, you know, I was doing these 14ers. I've only been doing them for the last 3 years, so I'm kind of long in the tooth to be doing that stuff. But I'd come down and I'd say, "Here's the valley I went up. Here's what I saw," and he would remember all that stuff, all the roads up, and it just drove. It was it was fantastic. And finally, you know, as I got better at this and into more remote peaks, he got nervous and he got me a Garmin finally. He said, "This is driving me crazy. I want you to text me and get something to me so I don't have to worry." So he was as much a participant in these things as I was, even though he was sitting at home.
Oh, awesome.
Living vicariously through you and your experiences. Many people do that.
All right. As long as there's no more questions, we should all get outside and enjoy the day.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
see ya.
you. See you around.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Hannah. Have a
Bye,
great one.
Scott. Have a good day.
Say goodbye.
Bye, puppy. Bye,
No.
ballet.
Is yours still there?
Yeah, she's here. She's ready to go.
Oh, she's snoozing.
Yeah, she's ready to go.
Have a great day.
You too. See ya.
All right, take care.